so that yesterday will not be as bad as today, and today will not be as good as or as bad as tomorrow will be, or should I say, vice versa. Today will be better than yesterday, and tomorrow will be better than today. Something to that effect. So we want to make sure that we're on an upward climb as we go through things. Now, I managed to take the opportunity and list out for you guys. Oh, I did that one twice. I just seen that. Hold on, let me get that out of the way because I was like, man, why is it that that one looks like it's a double placement? It. I got you guys the list of the stocks, and what I did was instead of trying to chase down all of these stock options, um, I went the extra mile and just listed them for you. That way, you can write them down as you see them scrolling across the bottom of the screen if you're watching this from 16 by 9. But those of you that's watching it from 9 by 16, you can grab those stocks. That's from our core satellite portfolio. And y'all can utilize those to help you guys with investment options. I recommend that you go and grab 10 or 15 of the cheapest dividend paying stocks, spread all your money across them evenly, and then watch the money grow. And then expand into some other ones as you see fit. But, try to make sure that you keep your averages well above 15%. Now, let's go ahead and dive into today's show because today's show, we're supposed to be talking about investing in Iceland. And Iceland is going to be one of those things that it, it's, it's a different idea of investments, not like what you would think. And we're going to get into it to kind of give you the understanding as to what's going on. Because unlike some of the areas in Asia, Iceland is not as cheap as you would think, and investment opportunities are not as widespread. And we're going to get into that today so that you guys can have an idea as to what's going on. Because when we give you guys uh, some of those dynamics where uh, for those men that are looking for a family oriented woman that and then going to find themselves a place where they can afford to stay, you typically hear the traditional ideas of like the Philippines, Japan, Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, stuff to that effect. And a lot of people that hear about that get offended and then they start shaming the men for making those decisions. But when you do the research around the world, you have places like Rwanda, Bangladesh. You have a lot of other places around the United, not around the United States, but around the world that also are equally like Kazakhstan, financially affordable. But not all of those cultures are the traditional family-oriented culture like Norway. Norway is more egalitarian. So when you're looking for both the old fashioned teamwork mentality, where let's build a family together mentality, is what you're looking for. And then you're also looking for the let's make money and spend less money to do it mentality. You have a limited number of countries around the world that actually performs to that magnitude. Philippines becomes the number one choice because they actually work with you as a team out there as opposed to trying to dominate you. But we go to every country around, or we at least research every country around the world, and we try to come up with the information that is relevant. And you can do your own research to curate it and fact check it, and you'll come to find that yeah, there are very few places where it is cheaper than Hong Kong, it's cheaper than the United States, and you have the family-oriented behavior patterns at the same time. And that's why we're going to be talking about Iceland today, because I mean, look, you've seen the pictures. I mean, the impossibly green cliffs, the blue icy caves, right? The eternal glow of the northern lights. I mean, you've heard of the stories of a progressive, peaceful society, right? Viking paradise, land of fire and ice, where adventure is just around the corner, and a life somehow simpler and more pure than the ones that we've actually experienced, right? And then you've seen the fantasy that Iceland sells to the world splashed across your social media feeds. I mean, I've seen it too. In fact, a lot of us will chase it. A lot of us will try to move there to this remote island in the North Atlantic looking for that exact fantasy. Some of the people that are looking for that adventure, that opportunity for a different way of life will end up trying to travel based off of what they've seen on their social media feed. But you need to understand something that what you see online is a fantasy and you're actually buying into that fantasy. I got to tell you that the reality for a regular person, someone without a trust fund or a high powered remote job, is much, much harsher than the dream that you guys have been sold. Because before you even think about booking a one-way ticket, before you start packing your bags with wool sweaters and hiking boots, there are three brutal truths that you absolutely must understand. And these are the truths that they don't put in the travel brochures. So I'm going to break down the insane cost of living that will bleed your bank account dry, especially if you don't have a surplus of revolving capital coming in. And this is often confusing when you start including their dating culture. That is nothing like you would have expected. And the hard reality of why this isn't some untapped land of easy money or simple investments. Now, this is the Iceland that you haven't been shown. And this is the brutal truth. So let's start with the most immediate, most visceral shock that you'll experience in Iceland. And you already know what it is, it's the cost. I want you to forget everything that you think you know about expensive cities: London, New York, Zurich. Iceland is in a league of its own, and it's a punishing one. It's not just expensive, it's a relentless, soul crushing financial pressure that dictates every single aspect of your daily life. Now, this isn't a minor inconvenience, it's a fundamental reality of existing in this location. So let's get into those hard numbers. I'm going to figure out uh, the cost that will either make you gasp, nervously laugh, or find yourself in an area where you're just staggering. The average regular monthly salary here before taxes is around 758,000 Icelandic krones. I know that sounds like a lot. And when you convert it to US dollars, it comes out to roughly $5,550. So a little under $6,000 a month. A lot of people think I could live like a king on that. And I can hear you thinking it because at one point I thought that too. But you won't. You won't even live like a prince. You'll live like a humble servant to your own bills. First, let's talk about what the government takes before you ever see a single krona. Iceland has a progressive tax system, and it is not shy. For 2025, your income up to about 472,000 uh, Icelandic kroners per month, which is roughly the first $3,400 you earn, they're going to be taxed at about 31.49%. And a lot of people think that's manageable. Happy New Year's, Michael. Good to see you again. But then for every krona each that you earn above that, up to around 1.3 million Icelandic kroners, the tax rate jumps to 37.99%. And if you're a higher earner making more than that, it climbs to a staggering 46.29%. So the average 5,500 or $5,550 a month salary after taxes, you're looking at something closer to about $3,800 to about $4,000 easy landing into your bank account. And trust me, that money disappears faster than the daylight in December. Now, where does it all go? Well, let's start with the single biggest expense that every person has to have. It is the roof over your head. The rental market, especially in Rakajavi, where most people live and work, is brutal. A small one bedroom apartment in the city center easily runs you from about 250 to 275,000 Icelandic kroners per month, and that's around 1,800 to 2,000 US dollars, which is between half, if not two-thirds, of all of your money. Let that sink in for a second, and that's post-tax income. On average, the cost of the roof over your head takes half your salary after taxes takes a quarter of it. Damn, that's just for rent. You want a three-bedroom for a family? Prepare to pay upward of 395,000 Icelandic kroners, which is over 3,100 US dollars, which is all of your money, and this is just the rent. And the reason is a perfect storm of a housing shortage that was never resolved after the 2008 crash, coupled with the explosion of tourism, which turned thousands of potential long term apartments into lucrative short term Airbnb rentals. And there are simply not enough places for people to live, and the landlords can and do charge whatever they want. Now, for an individual that wants to get into real estate, this is actually a green light. Because if you understand that there's an overpriced rental market, you can do one or two things. You can either get into a rental market and price with the market, or you can get in there like a bandit and price below the market and start serving the at risk community, turning over 100% usage of your properties and still making more than enough money to sustain, especially since you're not trying to live in that environment. So, think about this. If you pay the rent, you maybe have about 2,000 US dollars left for the entire month. Go grocery shopping. This is where the fantasy of living in a pristine natural paradise collides with the reality of living on a remote volcanic rock in the middle of the ocean because almost everything that is imported in, that apple, those bell peppers, that box of cereal, it all had to be shipped or flown in, and you are going to pay for every mile of that journey. The government also slaps high taxes and import duties on these goods, which is always going to be passed off on to the customers. So, walking through a virtual grocery store aisle, you want to make a simple chicken dinner. Pound of chicken fillet will set you back around $7 to $9. Pound of ground beef, forget about it. You're looking at around $13. A liter of milk, 198 Icelandic kroners, which is like $1.40. So nearly a gallon is going to be about $5.50. You're looking at almost $6 for a gallon of milk. Dozen eggs and close the doors at about $6. And a simple loaf of bread could easily be about $4 to $5. Now we're kind of feeling like, I pay that much in America. Probably more than that. I mean, a head of broccoli, often looking a bit sad from its long journey, might still be $5. Your monthly grocery bill for one person, even being frugal, will easily be over 40 to 50,000 kroners, which is around 290 to $360. And I can tell you that the average person in America is spending between $400 and $500 a person. So for the month, that is a lot of money, right? Eating out is not a casual decision. It's a major financial event because a simple meal at an inexpensive or cheap restaurant will cost you at least 25 US dollars. Want to take someone on a date for a mid-range or three-course meal? Be prepared to drop about 140 US dollars. Pint of beer, it'll take the edge off, right? And that'll take about 1,500 Icelandic dollars, which is about 11 bucks to get a beer. So your $2,000 is now down to about 1,650 US dollars just for the groceries, but you need to get around. Then when we start talking about that public transportation, not as comprehensive as in other major European cities, especially if you want to explore the nature that you came there for, right? So you think about buying a car, brand new Volkswagen Golf, standard reliable car, costs about 6.2 million Icelandic kroners, which is about 45,000 US dollars. Bro, this and a Golf, you could probably pull one of those off for between 18 and $25,000 in the United States. You're getting it for $45,000 in Iceland. Import tax on that vehicle is astronomical. So you might decide to buy a used one. You're still paying a significant premium. Then you need to fuel it up. Gasoline prices are around 300 Icelandic dollars per liter, which is about $8.10 a gallon. $8 a gallon, bro. I know some of y'all in some states right now they're still paying a little under $2 a gallon. Go over there by Iceland, $8 a gallon. So a simple commute becomes a serious line item on your budget. Let's not forget the insurance, which is always costly. Utilities are the one small mercy that you have, but they're not free. Thanks to Icelandic's incredible geothermal and hydropower, electricity and heating are relatively cheap compared to everything else, but you're still looking at around $100 to $150 a month for basic utilities and internet. So when you're tallying that up, you have the 1,900 US dollars for the rent, $325 for the groceries, $125 for utilities, some basic transportation, and be a little bit generous of it, say around 200 bucks, you're at $2,550. And as before, you bought a single cup of coffee, a new pair of socks, gone to the movies, or even saved a single krona to invest somewhere else. But your average take home pay being around $3,900 is now down to about $1,350 for everything else for the entire month. So this is the reality. It's a constant grinding calculation. God forbid you spend a little extra money to get a little extra stuff for a few extra people that you have under that same income. You wind up not having a dollar. It's standing in the grocery store, converting price in your head and putting things back on the shelf because it says no to social invitations because a night out could cost you $100, and it's the death of spontaneity because you have to save to do something nice. You're the budget is crazy out there. So even experts estimate that a single person's monthly cost, including rent, can be around, well, excluding leaving the rent out, could be around $1,500 a month. But when you throw that rent in there, add an extra $2,000 a month for the rent, you're at about $3,500 a month. And when they're taking the rest of it for taxes, you're literally broke after you buy groceries. Um, Even with a good average salary, you're perpetually behind the numbers simply recognizing that the numbers don't work out for a regular person trying to build a life. So you're not coming here to get rich. You're not coming to Iceland to save money. If you move to Iceland, you're coming here to work incredibly hard just to tread water. Now, you might show up on vacation, and if you put aside enough money for it, you go out there and have your blast for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you come back. But to say that you're going to start up a standard of living here, that's not possible. But that's the first and most important truth about being in Iceland. Then You'll be trading financial freedom for proximity to the waterfalls. And for many, that trade is simply not worth it. Special shout out to the trader. He says the best thing about Iceland is the good looking women. Ha. Well, let's move from the wallet to the heart then. You've survived the stickier shock. You're living on instant noodles and free tap water, but you're in Iceland. So you're thinking, okay, at least I'll experience the dating, right? This dating culture that I've heard about so strong, the independent Icelandic women, the equality. Maybe I'll find a very beautiful Viking queen, right? That's what you said. You said the best thing about going to Iceland is the good looking women. Slow it down a little bit because just like the fantasy of a cheap cost of living, the fantasy of Icelandic dating is a far cry from complex. It's often bewildering. Reality that you're going to face is going to be so dramatic because you're coming from this as an outsider looking in. And I want you guys to understand that the brutal truth is that Icelandic dating is built on a foundation of radical equality and casualness that can feel liberating to some, but cold, confusing, and emotionally inaccessible to many foreigners. Because first, you have to understand the core principle that governs all social interactions here: gender equality, right? The crap that they're pitching in America. Iceland has been ranked number one in the world for gender equality for more than a decade straight. And this isn't just a political slogan, it is deeply ingrained in their cultural reality. So women have near total economic and social independence, which I don't have a problem with, but it is profoundly shaping the dating landscape. The traditional gender roles that many of us have grown up with in the United States, or whether we realize it or not, have been socialized into simply not applying in Iceland. And that's going to be tough because if we think about it, what does this look like in practice? Forget the idea of traditional chivalry. The women there are going to find that insulting. Insisting on paying for a woman's drink or meal isn't seen as polite, right? I'm telling you. What we would have done to look like a good man, they're going to see that as patronizing, as if you're implying she can't afford it herself. The bill is almost always split. And the idea of a man pursuing a woman is also outdated there. Women are just as likely, if not more likely, to initiate contact. So you'd probably be safer hanging out in Iceland, not hitting on chicks, waiting for one to come and look at you. Just saying. And to ask for the numbers to suggest for meetups, this directness can be jarring if you're not using it. Let's look at it like this. They're going to come over, they're gonna ask for your number, they're gonna ask you for a date, they're gonna tell you straight up. They like you, they want to go do something with you, whatever the case may be, which is completely different from reading mixed body language and the lack of verbal communication that we get from Western culture. There are no subtle games over there, no playing hard to get over there, which we're going to be covering that on one of our upcoming shows about how playing hard to get can sabotage your ability to be successful in a relationship. But specifically to this, the communication is expected to be straightforward and honest. So if they are not interested, they're just going to tell you no. They're not going to lie and say they have a boyfriend. They're just going to tell you no. The directness extends to physical intimacy. Now, the stereotype you may have heard sometimes crudely phrased, points to the fundamental difference in the dating scripts. In many cultures, a typical relationship progression is meet, date, get to know each other, become exclusive, and then become physically intimate. We should change that script, but that's the script that we have to go on. In Iceland, the script is often flipped on its head. It's incredibly common for people to meet at a bar or at a party, go home together, hook it up, and then maybe, hopefully, possibly decide if they want to see each other again for a cup of coffee. Let me run that back for you fellas. This is why passport bros be flying to Iceland. You go there, the chick picks you up at the bar, takes you back to her place, gives you a good time, and if you're good enough, then she'll decide if we're gonna meet for coffee so that she can find out what your name is. I'm just trying to tell you, there is a very different level of stigma that is attached to casual sex there for either gender. So just like guys have a body count, these chicks out there in Iceland can have a 2,000 body count and be proud of it. Mm. But like you said, right? They're cute, right? On pictures, on Google. But the casual sex over in Ireland, it is viewed as natural, normal parts of social life, not a monumental step laden with emotional meanings. So, for someone coming from a culture where sex is seen as a major milestone in a relationship, this can be incredibly confusing because you might think a physical encounter signifies the start of something serious. Well, when you're in the Icelander, it was simply a fun Tuesday night, and there is no implicit promise of a future relationship. Now, this is going to lead to the concept of the casual date because the first date in Iceland is rarely a formal dinner. It's considered too much pressure. Instead, it's grabbing an ice cream, going for a walk, meeting up for a coffee, which remember, this happens the night after because you guys have already slept together. It's a low investment, low pressure, and often low connection situation. Can we exist in the same place at the same time without an awkward feeling after what we did last night, kind of thing? It's the way of feeling each other out without really committing. Outdoor activities like hiking are also common, which sound romantic, but again, it's rooted in a particularly practical fashion that can feel devoid of romance to an outsider. Because I mean, you're existing. I'm gonna be honest with you. As much as I agree with hiking as a date, I'm lazy as food. You are not gonna have me tread 10 miles on a date with anybody. I don't care how cute you are. You might get the first 500 steps. But after that, you're carrying me the rest of the way. I don't have a Timberland Mastiff. I can't ride my dog the rest of the way. We didn't get Shetland ponies. I mean, you start talking about 10, 15 miles, and I know some folks, oh no, get your exercise. Look that. I already played Wii Fit at the house before we left. I did a whole gym workout on the video game console. I am not about to do it again out here. I'm too pretty for that. But for a short walk, 500, maybe 1,000 paces round trip. That's it, right? Developing a shared activity, not necessarily about a romantic connection. This all happens within the unique context of a tiny, close knit population. So everybody knows everybody except you. So the entire county The entire country has a population of around 400,000 people throughout the country. So you've got states like Louisiana, Arkansas, you got a few other states that have around about that many people. This is the entire country. Okay. There are cities in California, Florida, and New York that have more people than that in the city, in the state. Okay. They whole country 400,000 food. So you go to a city might have anywhere between 100 and 1,000 people there, and everybody then probably shagged everybody there. So you might actually be fruitful pickings because you're fresh meat. You're the only person in the neighborhood that hasn't been shagged yet. Uh, Reykjavik feels less like a capital city and more like a small town where everyone knows everyone else thoroughly. There's even an app that is the Icelandic Icelanding a book. That's what it's called. Icelanding a book. Book of Icelanders is how it's translated. And that allows people to check if they're related before things get too serious. I'm not joking. Hold on, I'm gonna put this in the comment section. I want y'all to see that this is crazy. So y'all meet up, and y'all check each other's profile. And this the app right here, y'all. This the app right here. Y'all check each other's profile to make sure that y'all not related to one another before y'all smash. Because if y'all find out y'all related to one another, now y'all gotta just be friends. My dad is your sister's brother. Oh boy. It's famous and true curiosity that highlights the small world reality of this town. But this small population has downsides for dating. Your social circles are incredibly intertwined. So the person you went on a date with last week is probably the cousin of your coworker or your best friend of your next Tinder match. And this creates a strange social dynamic because on one hand, people are very open and casual, but on the other hand, there's an underlining caution because reputations still matter even in the small town. Can't be the town whore, right? This can make it very difficult for a foreigner to truly break in because you're an outsider. People are friendly, but getting past a certain superficial level of connection can feel impossible because while they'll hook up with you because they don't know who you are and you're definitely not related to them, turning it into something more serious, you're not part of the clique yet. Icelanders have often had tight knit groups of friends that they've known since childhood, and those circles can be notoriously difficult to penetrate, even though the women aren't that difficult to penetrate. So you might find yourself having a lot of casual, friendly interactions, but feeling profoundly lonely because the emotional investments are not there. The dating pool is also transient. Iceland has a significant number of people who are there temporarily: students, seasonal workers, travelers. This contributes to the casual, non committal nature of the relationships. So, why invest deeply in someone who is likely leaving in the next 6 months? For someone looking to build something lasting, this can be very frustrating. You're swimming in a sea of maybes and guaranteed goodbyes. So, what does this all mean for the average person? Well, it means that you need to recalibrate your expectations entirely for this particular type of culture. And if you're looking for a traditional relationship structure, you will not find it here because if you equate physical intimacy with emotional commitment, you will likely get hurt. And if you expect to be the provider or the pursuer, you will seem out of touch. Because since the women will approach you, if you're approaching them, you might be perceived as desperate. Because irony is, you be the only guy there pursuing, well, you and the other foreigners. The brutal truth of Icelandic dating is that its focus on equality and casualness can create a landscape that feels emotionally barren for those not accustomed to it. It requires a thick skin and a complete shedding of cultural baggage. You must embrace a level of directness that might feel blunt, a degree of casualness that might feel cold, and an independence that can sometimes border on indifference. So the strong, independent Icelandic woman is not waiting to be swept off of her feet. She's standing firm on her own 2 feet, and you're welcome to stand beside her as an equal if you want to, but don't for a second think that she needs you to hold her up, because that is the second brutal truth. Now, look, I know this is a lot to take in, some pretty heavy stuff, and we're only two-thirds of the way through it. So if you're finding the information valuable, if you're opening your eyes to different sides of Iceland and a lot of the topics that we cover on the show, then do me a favor and make sure that you hit that subscription button if you haven't done so already. Like and subscribe to the channel, hit those notification buttons, hit the favorite button if you're watching us from Twitter, or if you're watching us from Twitch, hit that favorite button because I'm putting this out there because it is what I believe that we all need to know before we go to places like this. And I want to hear from you guys because you guys have to tell me if you've ever been to Iceland. Let me know what you think. Did you experience any of the stuff that we're going through? What's the most surprising thing that you've learned so far? Drop that information into the comment section because we are more than willing to share the real stories and be better prepared so that when we go to whatever country we're traveling to, we know exactly how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. Because when in Rome, you do as Romans do, right? Okay, now let's get into that final brutal truth, the other third of the show. This is going to bring us to the one truth that shatters the dream of Iceland as some kind of undiscovered frontier for wealth and opportunity. We always got to talk about the money, y'all. And that myth of easy money, that's what we're about to break down right now. Oh, look at that. 9 minutes. 11:52. We got 9 minutes. I know y'all, the 1,001 people are gonna drop their cell phones and scream Happy New Year's and clean glasses as I sit here and drink my Sam's Club bottle of water. Um, it's cheaper than a bottle of champagne. Happy New Year. Um, you might look at this small town. It's kind of a developed country with its high standard of living, its blooming tourism, and unique energy resources. But you might think there must be a way in, right? There must be an angle for a regular guy to invest, to start a business, to get a piece of the pie, right? Well, the brutal truth is that for the average person, especially a non-European, Iceland is a tricky system. It is a fortress designed to protect its own, and you are on the outside squeezing in. The opportunities that you think are there are largely a mirage, accessible only to large corporations or those with the right passport and deep connections. Let's start with the most direct form of investment, buying property, because real estate is best done all over the world. As a non EEA citizen, you are generally not allowed to own the real estate in Iceland without special permission from the Ministry of Justice. I wonder if we can create an LLC that's called the Ministry of Justice. Doing business with the ministry. I don't know. Uh, but this isn't granted lightly, getting something from the Icelandic Ministry of Justice. You typically need to have a legitimate business purpose or a close personal tie, like being married to an Icelandic citizen. So the dream of buying a little cabin outside of Reykjavik and renting it out on an Airbnb scenario, that is a non-starter. The government has rules to prevent exactly that, trying to protect its housing market from foreign speculation. Now, if you're going to go in there, buy and hold, and instead of doing Airbnbs, do long-term rental properties, since there are 400,000 individuals out there, plus the ones that aren't actually documented, like the ones that are still growing up and whatnot, you still have the capability of buying low income, of buying property and developing low income, but that's from a business, an LLC or C corporation situation. You're doing a foreign domestic business where you're setting up something where you're going to be trying to provide long term housing for individuals out there. It's doable, but there's a lot of red tape in there. This one rule is a massive barrier, shutting down one of the most common avenues for personal investment available in other countries. And okay, you think, so I won't buy property, I'll start a business. Again, you will run into a wall of regulations because while it's relatively simple for EEA citizens to start a business, it is more complicated for people who are not one of the locals. To form certain types of companies, the founders and directors must be residents of an EEA or OECD country. And this means that unless you have a European business partner who is willing to take the lead, or you navigate a complex residency process, your dream might be dead on arrival. So the system is designed to keep control of the economy in local and European hands, just like the Philippines. So you can't just show up with a good idea and a work ethic. You need the right credentials, the right passport, and often the right partners. Even if you navigate that, what sectors would you invest in? The local Icelandic economy is strong, but it's not diverse. It stands on three main pillars: tourism, fishing, and energy intensive industries like aluminum smelting. These are not industries uh, that are small, which independent investors can easily break into. The tourism market is saturated with large established players. Fishing is controlled by quotas and long-standing family operations, and aluminum smelting requires billions in capital. So the government does promote investments in sectors like renewable energy technology, data centers, and biotech. And yes, they offer incentives like R&D tax credits, but again, these are not opportunities for the average person. These are plays for institutional investors, venture capital firms, and multinational corporations. So they are likely for companies that can build a massive data center to take advantage of the cheap green electricity. not a guy who wants to open a bike rental shop. The entry barrier, both in terms of capital and regulatory compliance, are immense. So, how are you sleep barking about Happy New Year when we're doing a live podcast? Cut it out. Usually he's sitting on my shoulder up here like a big old cat, but he's actually a dog. So, what about the stock market? If you can't buy property or start up a business, can you at least invest indirectly? Yes. But for a low income person outside Iceland, more realistic, unorthodox exposure would usually be via methods that you can use from your own home country. First option is through low cost global or Nordic stock ETFs that hold Icelandic linked firms. An ETF or exchange trade fund is essentially a basket of stocks that you can buy with a single click instead of trying to pick individual winners. Since you're not there, you don't know which ones they are. If you're buying a small piece of an entire market, you're likely to do good all the way around. However, you need to be clear about what you're getting. You're not buying a pure Icelandic fund, you're buying a Nordic fund where Icelandic companies like Merrill or Icelandair might make up a tiny fraction of that total investment alongside dozens of other companies from Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Norway, which we need to cover Denmark coming soon as well. It's a very diluted exposure. A second, more accessible path is using micro investing apps in your own country that allows for tiny, regular contributions. These are the apps that let you invest your spare change or put away $5 or $10 a week automatically, where you can set up tiny, regular contributions into broad based global and European stock funds. Again, Iceland's portion of this will be very, very minuscule, maybe a fraction of a percent point, but it's a way to get some skin in the game with almost no capital. But let's be realistic. This is not the Icelandic opportunity that you were dreaming of. Hell, it wasn't the Icelandic opportunity we were dreaming of with the women when you said that the Icelandic women were good looking. They're good looking, but if 400,000 people have interacted with 400,000 people, each chick might have 10,000 bodies. And then you got to ask yourself, you putting your mouth on that? But this is just a standard. So you got to think about diversified global investing that you can do from your laptop anywhere in the world. It doesn't require you to move to Ireland or Iceland just to ensure the high cost of living or to navigate the complex social scenes. It is a detached financial transaction that has nothing to do with building a life in Iceland because that is excessively difficult. And with Iceland having a $5,000 a month standard of living for the poor, you're swinging over to Iceland with six to $8,000 a month. And if you're swinging over to Iceland with six to $8,000 a month, knowing that you're spending $2,000 to $3,000 to get there and $2,000 to $3,000 to get back, knowing that you still have to pay for your United States standard of living if you're not selling everything off and start traveling the world, you're looking at a good 20 grand for each month that you're going to be gone. Just want to throw that out there. Because if you're doing six to 8,000 for your standard of living, if you're coming out of New York or California, 4 to 5,000 if you're coming out of Florida or Texas, and then you're looking at another 5,000 to be there, you're already at 10. And then if you're looking at the 2 to 3 thousand to get out there and the 2 to 3 thousand to get back, you're looking at another six, which is at like 16. And that's 16,000. And you and I both know that we're missing something somewhere in there that has nothing to do with your passport that's going to be extra cost. And if you buy any souvenirs, that's going to have extra cost. And you might have to pay extra money to ship it back. And that's going to be extra cost. So you just understand that if you're already at 16 and there's a $4,000 buffer between what I said as you're going to need about $20,000 a month versus what it really is, you know what I mean? And $20,000, that's for some people is their whole annual salary. So for a per month basis to be there 3 months and 60 grand, that's a full salary at a Wendy's. That's an annual salary. That's an annual salary if you worked at Walmart or a Shell gas station as the person pumping the gas. Well, they're not pumping the gas. They're pushing a button on the screen to have it release the gas. But you understand my point. The most viable investment for a regular guy in Iceland is not in capital, but in skill. So the country has a tight labor market and a need for workers in specific fields, particularly in tourism, construction, and healthcare. So, I mean, if you can wait tables, bartend, clean stuff up, you got a good spot there. If you've got experience in construction and you can build some shit, you got a good price. If you've done your due diligence in the healthcare industry and you're not finding what you're looking for in America, you can go to Iceland and they got you there too. If you have a skill that is in high demand, which you should look and see if it is before you get there, you might find a way to get a work permit. The catch, the employer often has to prove that no Icelander or EEA citizen could do the job that you're doing. Crazy, right? This can regulate foreigners to the jobs that locals don't want. Lower wage, physically demanding work in the service industries or manual labor areas. If that don't remind me of the 1800s when you first got off the boat and got your barcode. Mm, deep. But you might find a job, just unlikely to be the career defining, wealth building opportunity that you might have imagined. You will be a cog in their machine that serves the big industries, just not the way you would have hoped. So the easy money fantasy is just that, a fantasy. Iceland is not a land of untapped opportunity for the individual entrepreneur or investor. It is a mature, heavily regulated, and somewhat protectionist economy. The wealth is already concentrated. The rules are already written and they are not written for you. But, some of us with good tans can't find a country where the rules were made for us anyway. The brutal truth is that your financial past in Iceland is far more likely to be one of struggle than one of financial success and extensive wealth. You will work for your money. You will work very, very hard, and most of it will be consumed by the high cost of simply existing there. The dream of striking it rich in the land of fire and ice will freeze over very, very quickly. So, there you have it. The three brutal truths, the insane cost of living that will hold you in a financial chokehold, the unique, equality driven dating culture that can feel casual to the point of being cold and isolating, and the investment mirage, the reality that is not a land of easy money or open opportunities for the average non-Icelandic person. So I didn't make this to crush your dreams. I made this to arm you with reality. The fantasy version of Iceland is a beautiful one. What you see on social media is phenomenal, but it's not entirely false. The women in Iceland are very beautiful and swingers. The landscapes are breathtaking. The scene of safety is real because I mean, how far can they get with crime when you're stuck on a block of ice or an island of beautiful green grass? But the society is very, very progressive in many ways. And those things come at a cost, very, very, very high cost. A cost that is measured not just in Icelandic krona, but in the loneliness, in struggle, and in the constant grinding pressure to simply make ends meet. So for some people, that trade off is worth it. But for those who come here with a specialized, in demand skill, a high paying remote job, or substantial savings, the Icelandic experience can be incredible. Not everybody's going to want that though. But for the regular guy, the guy working a service job, the guy trying to save up, the guy looking for a connection, for a traditional family, traditional oriented person where you can build wealth from the pennies in your pocket, the reality is much, much harsher than the fantasy you've been sold over the years. My goal is to give you guys the information that I wish that we would have had many, many moons ago to help you make decisions with your eyes open, not clouded by the aurora tinted glasses of Instagram posts and TikTok videos and travel blogs. The truth about Iceland is that it's beautiful, but its beauty is matched only by its difficulty. It is a land of incredible highs and crushing lows. It is a magical and very, very brutal place. So before making any life changing decisions, you need to ask yourself honestly if you are prepared for that, because that is the brutal honesty. Now, if tonight's show's helped you, if it's given you more balanced perspectives, make sure that you take that opportunity. I'm going to tell you guys one more time to subscribe and share this with somebody who needs it because most importantly, I want you guys to tell me what your stories are. If not Iceland, have you guys traveled to a different country that was not what you thought it was before you got there? What was your biggest takeaways from it? Make sure that you leave any questions or experiences that you have in the comments because I want to make sure that we continue these discussions and make them very real. But before we go anywhere, I want to make sure that we touch base on something really simple. Because ladies, I mean, I understand that y'all have y'all's observation of these things. If a man is in his area, whether it's his neighborhood, his city, his state, and he cannot find what he's looking for, he's going to research how much it approximately should cost. And if he's wise, he's going to overstate that by a lot. Then he's going to make a plan so that he can budget to go and take care of that. Now, the ideology here would be that the standard of living, because he's going there and coming back, the standard of living in the United States is going to be fixated. So, whatever your standard of living is, you're going to put enough budget aside to cover that. Then the amount of money it takes to get there and come back, plus the amount of money that you expect to pay, overstating that as well for the amount of time that you're going to be gone. When you start thinking of places like the Philippines, Japan, stuff like that, where the cost of living is less than $1,000 a month, in certain areas, $1,500 a month, in others, $2,000, you're living more than comfortable. The average American will tell himself, well, I'm going to do myself a justice and make sure that I have $3,000 a month worth of capital available just in case of emergencies, right? Let's say you want to be there for 90 days, you're looking at $9,000. If your American standard of living is $3,000 a month, you're looking at $18,000. Then the flight over there is going to be about $2,000, and the flight back is going to be $2,000. So now you're looking at $22,000 for 90 days. Um, if that's the plan, and this is one person holding themselves down, where their American standard of living will still be there when they come back, and they're going to spend 3 months in another country and then come back, right? So when a man plots this, he puts his budget aside, he invests in his budget, or he invests in stocks that's going to make the budget, and he builds up 22, he might build up 25 just to be on the safe side, so that he could take that 25 and go out there and execute that. If he finds what he's looking for and he brings that back, the person that he brings back, he would have had invested more money to meet that person and bring that person back than what it would cost to buy a brand new Honda Civic cash up front. And I just want to put that dynamic out there because, ladies, it doesn't cost 25 grand for a man to meet that same style of person here in the United States. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. The flavor's sweet. Happy New Year. I appreciate you dropping by during the New Year rollover. So when we think about the dynamic that we have in the US culture, in the Western culture, where the women are not satisfied with the type of men that's left in the dating pool, the men are not satisfied with the type of women that are in the dating pool. The men are looking for change elsewhere. The women are pissed off that the men are looking for change elsewhere. And the dynamic is not changing. The ladies are not mad at the men because of how the men behave. They are mad at the men because of where the men spend their money. The men are mad at the women because of how the women behave, and the men are not willing to spend their money on women that behave the way they behave. Now, ladies, y'all can change how the men spend their money because y'all control the narrative. Change your behavior. So many of the women that are over the age of 35 believe that a man is supposed to accept her as she is, flaws and all, but he is not going to be accepted with any flaws. Um, she knows what she wants, but she does not have to figure out or care about what the man wants. And he must be the type of man that she expects him to be, even though she is not going to be the type of woman that he expects to have. Ladies, y'all got to change the dynamic. Because if that's not a list of that's not just a double standard. That's just a complete surrender. Because if the roles were reversed, ladies, and y'all were the ones that had to accept the man for who he was, but y'all had to meet explicit expectations. He knows what he wants, and you have to comply with that, but he doesn't have to do anything that you want. Y'all would be pissed. It's a shoe on the other foot method. Y'all would be pissed. And I ask because with Iceland being the egalitarian equality society, that it's not like Norway, but I mean, it's there. That's the kind of culture, ladies, that y'all are looking for. And the men are actually looking for more Philippines, Japan, Vietnam, South Korea, because the dynamic is different. We're going to get cooperation. The men are going to get valued. They're going to get appreciated. They're going to receive effort from their partner that helps the man function so that the man can put more effort into providing for their partner. And I said this on the show before, ladies, if y'all start treating y'all man like a stock option and stop treating them like an ATM machine, you'll get better results. Because if a man is about to spend $25,000 to spend 3 months in another country so that he can find him a woman that'll come to America and be the wife that he wants to have, why can't the women in America be the woman that a man wants, not lusts for, wants, needs, benefits from, improves, thrives with, and instead of him wasting 25 grand to go to another country, that he can invest that 25 grand in America with the woman that's in America, where he can match that egalitarian 50 grand and work your way up to $1 million and not have to be on the struggle. Why not? Why can we not? Because we're covering that show coming up soon, and we're going to be talking about real soon, probably next week, because I know this week's calendar is somewhat booked up. How you can get into a relationship and literally build millions, yet 100% of relationships in low income society never make it there, and the largest majority of middle income society doesn't make it there either. Why? That's the question I'm going to leave you with today. Men stay single and build themselves up so that they can have the financial status for a woman to finally value him, where in his late 40s, 50s, 60s, now he's worthy of probably a woman that's 27 or 29, right? But when he was between 18 and 30, he was just something to do, part of the entertainment scene, but not necessarily someone to value. Why? We're going to get there. So, until we get there, I want you guys to stay tuned. Tomorrow, we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. We had a question from Mixed Martial Arts last week about how to detach yourself from a relationship that you shouldn't be in anymore. Um, so, we're going to be talking about that one tomorrow. We have quite a few other topics throughout the rest of this week, and then we have our questions and comments from the fans on Sunday. I'm going to be getting the rest of the shows lined up for next week, where we'll be covering some of these other topics. So I want to make sure that you guys stay tuned, since we are definitely, in fact, live 7 nights a week. It is a high encouragement that you guys not only hit that like and subscribe button, but you hit that notification button. Follow us on Twitter or Twitch. Once they finish buying out TikTok and US has put up a US version of TikTok, we'll see what we can do about getting TikTok onto the show. But until then, I'm going to start off by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you, ladies, to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. And then, fellas, I give you guys this information to help you guys become higher value men, because you're not just valued by your income, you're also valued by your character. And if you are able to, fellas, make the changes in your life that could improve your personal life as well as your business life, then you'll have a better life. Because the first thing you have to focus on is changing the things in your life that you do not like, that are inside of your control, and then navigating around the things that you cannot control. And then, ladies, even though this is a male driven podcast from the male's perspective, y'all can take this information and utilize it to make yourselves higher value women as well. Because even with just today's Icelandic discussion, recognizing the equality network of Iceland, ladies, if y'all went there, don't think that you would go there and find chivalrous men. Because if you go to Iceland and recognize that the women are equally expected to be the women that they are supposed to be, the men would look at a woman that's a foreign woman that comes over there expecting the guy to pay, he's going to assume that she can't afford to pay for it herself, not because they think less of her as a person, but because the dynamic is that women are supposed to pay for themselves in Iceland. So even from the feminist mindset, if you were to travel to this country, you would not get the treatment that you thought you were going to get. If you wanted the traditional man, you might have to go to a different country. So, ladies, you too can take this information and navigate around the things that you would prefer to improve. With that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming to this and that. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Higher ground. Used to chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. Standing on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. I'm not landing on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never yield.